Are you ready for a classic traction nostalgia trip? In the early noughties, the open-world driving game genre really wasn't the fleshed-out behemoth it is today. Sure, you had street racers such as Need for Speed Underground 2 and the Midnight Club franchise incorporating open-world elements. You had arcade and home console classics like Crazy Taxi, Grand Theft Auto, and The Simpsons Hit and Run, with open-world driving baked into their DNA. All of these served their purpose. The latter weren't driving games designed for car fans, they were multifaceted entertainment engines for the masses. The aforementioned street racers were more tailored to petrolheads, often rooted in after-hours Japanese car culture, with a focus on customization and tuning. This was pretty much its own subgenre at this point, but as much as car fans young and old loved their souped-up skylines and cityscapes, myself included by the way, it was all too easy to grow tired of the darkness. Sometimes, all I wanted to do was wait until the sun came up and get out of town, somewhere far away. Why spend another day staring at the same old concrete blocks, when I could be blasting down a Hawaiian coastline in an open-top DB9, my very own tropical paradise. This contrast from the status quo at the time was just one of many reasons Test Drive Unlimited ploughed its way into millennial and Gen Z hearts. So here are 7 more. The story of the Test Drive franchise starts in 1987, when publishers Accolade released Test Drive. It may not blow the minds of young gamers today, but this simple supercar coastal police chase was critically acclaimed upon its release. Numerous sequels would follow as the new millennium approached, continuing the theme of exotic performance cars, winding public roads, and police chases. There were also a series of spin-offs, such as the 4 Test Drive Off-Road titles, and even Test Drive Le Mans, which focused on the '99 edition of the Great Race. By this stage, the franchise was, well, a little bit of a mess. Infogrames had purchased original publisher Accolade, and as the numbered sequels disappeared, the Test Drive name appeared to lose a little bit of its own identity. No clear direction from the outside, numerous developers, copyright and trademarking roadblocks, and games that, although solid, weren't exactly setting the world alight. Things were shifting, however. 2 more notable Infogrames acquisitions would take place in the early noughties. Developers Eden Studios, which would then become Eden Games, and Hasbro Interactive, the latter paving the way for Infogrames to rename itself Atari. With the next generation of Xbox just around the corner in the shape of the 360, and Eden Games at the development helm, everyone set to work on a fresh start. A rebrand that would mark a new beginning for the franchise on the latest hardware, with a clear and respectful nod to the game that started it all. It was to be called Test Drive Unlimited. Launching in 2006, TDU would retain the original Test Drive philosophy of fast cars, open roads, and traffic-filled police chases. This spine, however, needed some modern substance, so for the first time in the series, everything takes place within an open-world setting. Instead of forcing you through a standard, linear, menu-based progression system, the game begins in a pretty depressing-looking departure lounge. Think Birmingham International on a Tuesday evening. It quickly dawns on you that the dodgy-looking characters present in said departure lounge aren't going to be the antagonists in this story. Oh no, this lot are you. Don't worry too much though. Sunnier times are ahead, and thankfully, so are some clothes shops. As quickly as fashion sense crumbles, your plane arrives at Honolulu Airport on the Hawaiian island of Oahu, which has been recreated on a 1-to-1 scale. Sporting $200,000 cash, your luggage, probably the cash, and some terrible sunglasses, it's time to rent a car, buy a house, and start your new life. If only things were that simple in reality. Your character's fresh start is perhaps symbolic of the game itself. With this initial scene setting out of the way, the regular gameplay loop commences, and it's all fairly straightforward. You have free rein to drive around the island, using the map and sat-nav system to discover new areas, races, and challenges. Players compete using their purchased or rental cars in order to level up and earn money, which can be spent at the various dealerships and estate agents dotted across Oahu. As you would expect, faster and rarer cars are generally more expensive, as are bigger houses with bigger garages, which are needed in order to buy all of the cars that your heart desires. As you progress through the varied events, your level increases, in turn unlocking more challenging tests in faster car classes with more money at stake. That's the simple summary of how this game is structured, and for all intents and purposes, it works. A big personal draw was always the eclectic car list. Over 120 officially licensed vehicles from your favourite brands. There are sports cars, supercars, rare forgotten gems, concepts, and classics. This, just like peak Top Gear, provides a snapshot in time with a range of machinery that reminds us what the high-performance motoring industry looked like back in 2006. The car models themselves look great too, even if the handling is somewhat numb. The damage model is non-existent for the player, and the sound design lacks a little bit of gusto.
Look out for a Maserati. Driver has tires for traffic offenses. We lost the suspect.
The concept cars in particular are interesting, often unavailable to purchase until certain parts of the game have been completed, making them more desirable. I always love a futuristic concept car from the past. It shows us the direction manufacturers thought we were heading at the time. Although tuning is present and you can paint your car, customization doesn't come close to Need for Speed levels. There was of course the excuse of the contrasting car culture, and TDU does have a unique trick up its vehicular sleeve: the presence of motorbikes. Yep, this game wasn't just for four-wheel enthusiasts, as once you had discovered every car showroom location, into the fray enters Ducati, MV Agusta, Triumph and Kawasaki. The handling of these bikes is, a thing, but this was another twist, another unique angle setting it apart from most of the competition, and discovering these bike showrooms deep into your playthrough gives you one final taste of TDU's crowning jewel: dealerships. Discovering them, visiting them, exploring them, each element feels like its own special occasion. Driving across this vast island in search of an independent British sports car dealership to pick up that noble M12 GTO 3R I'd always dreamed of owning, only to stumble across a Spiker C8 La Violette that I'd fallen in love with during my Gran Turismo 4 days. I remember that feeling when I first found the Maserati and Ferrari dealership back in the day, happening across it by accident before excitedly going through each model one by one, every car more exciting than the last. You obviously couldn't afford these just yet, so how about taking the MC12 out for a test drive? Jump in your favourite car, no matter the value, for a taste of what's to come. Unlimited in quantity, limited in time, but a cool feature regardless. If you want to make meaningful progress and actually own this car one day, you're going to have to buy something more modest, and do it the hard way. Beyond the cars, the racing and the exploring, things are kept fresh by varied event types. There are eliminators, time trials, and speed tests, whether that be weaving through dense motorway traffic to reach the highest top speed, or a collection of cleverly placed radars. What route do you take to maximise each speed trap, and in what order? The challenges often force you into decision making. Ducking in and out of traffic is a key game mechanic, but do you take the risky high-speed approach, or play it safe? After all, hitting traffic on a blind crest kills every ounce of momentum, and it takes a long time to get back up to speed again. Then we have the missions, consisting of picking up models, objects, and even hitchhikers, before driving them safely to the destination in exchange for clothing tokens and cash. And let's not forget the classic vehicle transport missions. Every blade of grass you touch reduces your payout, and considering these are one shot with no restarts, every journey feels genuinely and beautifully perilous. Sometimes collisions feel totally out of your control, and there's something special about that in a game like this. Driving safely as well as quickly is a common theme, as outside of the events themselves, you also have the cops to deal with. Much like the aforementioned original test drive title, police chases are inevitable. As you attempt to flee, every single bit of damage you cause to the scenery or other cars results in more police resources, and a larger fine should you eventually be stopped. Sound familiar? The online element of this game was a big part of its appeal at the time too, especially with the 360 version. You could see other users driving around the island at the same time as you, then join an auto club, or challenge these fellow players to races for a cash reward, or even pink slips, as well as taking part in all of the regular single player events in a multiplayer format. Although the TDU servers are down and playing this multiplayer in its original form is no longer possible, mods on PC have actually kept the scene alive through the decades. In my opinion, any good racing game needs to strike some sort of balance. It needs to be challenging, but not impossible. It must reward genuine effort and success, rather than just handing you prizes on a plate, but equally, make it too much of a grind and a player might lose hope and interest. An open world location must feel vast and explorable, without becoming totally overwhelming. The original Test Drive Unlimited nails this balance brief. I find the 1,000 miles of Oahu roads weirdly manageable, bearing in mind that this is massive by today's standards, let alone in 2006. I think being an island always helps. The coastline keeps everything fenced in naturally, adding to the open world immersion. There are also certain hubs where the action generally takes place, Honolulu for example, so exploring the rural areas of the island does feel like an adventure away from home. There's no denying the island in general lacks a bit of atmosphere and variety, with no pedestrians, fairly basic buildings outside of the main areas, and a quite flat colour palette. But thanks to the use of satellite imagery, the terrain and the roads themselves are fairly representative of the real island. Maybe we're spoiled these days by the vibrancy of recent Forza Horizon offerings. Two more things on the subject of balance: the pacing of progression outside of the events, and the challenge and difficulty of the events themselves. Whether it be an event win or a new car, you really do have to work for it. It's not quite Gran Turismo 3 levels of grind, but it's far closer to that end of the scale than it is to Forza's golden platter of handouts. You start modestly, work hard, well, race hard, and save your money for a better car. And just as you finally feel like you're getting close to something special, you realise that if you don't want to sell your early game pride and joy, you're going to have to save for a house instead. One with a bigger garage at least. It's that all too familiar feeling of that thing you want being just out of reach. Only it isn't. Money often builds up quicker than you expect, and although at first things appear unobtainable, you get there eventually. Driving out of that dealership in your dream car is well worth the wait. They say money can't buy you happiness, and that feeling can often be translated through racing games. That moment where you reach the end, buy your dream car, beat the final boss, and realise it was never about the destination, it was about the journey all along. And to be honest, that does eventually happen in Test Drive Unlimited, but not as quickly as you might expect. The game leaves secrets scattered across the experience that keeps things engaging until the bitter end. There are of course the bike dealerships as I mentioned earlier. There's even a circuit called Oahu Raceway that can be driven on once you reach champion level. But that's not the only thing you gain access to. Did you know the original Test Drive Unlimited has a hardcore handling mode? Expectations were tempered when revisiting this on a modern direct drive steering wheel, and you know what? I was actually pretty impressed. It was fun, challenging, dare I say realistic? Okay, not all the time, but in many ways, it's a shame this wasn't at least an option from the start, as for some, this move towards realism could have made the entire playthrough even more immersive and rewarding. I guess adapting the AI opponents and target times for all events might have been a step too far. Then we have the Easter eggs, the literal secrets hidden amongst the grass. My favourite has to be the secret island from the PC and 360 versions that contains a beautiful roller coastal circuit running around its perimeter. Gorgeous scenery, plenty of elevation changes, it even winds its way around waterfalls in a technical section, testing your car's handling. It isn't easy to find the teleporter if you don't know where it is originally, making it all the more rewarding the first time you crack it. It's not just a game's strengths that make it special. Nostalgia bias is strong, even certain flaws that draw heavy criticism upon release become charming imperfections over time. Test Drive Unlimited certainly isn't immune, but some of its flaws are impossible to ignore, even with rose-tinted spectacles. Despite the fancy cars, the tropical island, the lifestyle and the traffic, the single-player experience can feel isolated and lonely. Aside from the hitchhikers, where are all the people, the characters? I guess with a map this big, you really can't have everything. There's also something corporate, dare I say impersonal, about it. Maybe it's the dated UI design, or the thinly veiled misogyny found in many games of this generation that have aged poorly, or the ostentatious nature of your character's aspirations. Yes, I would love to drive some of these incredible cars and spend time in a stunning Hawaiian mansion, but the delivery feels ever so slightly vulgar. While the incredible vehicle selection delights car enthusiasts, the overall presentation is weighted slightly towards wealth and image over ground-level car culture, and for me, this gives it a subtle identity crisis, because we know it's meant to be about the cars. I admit, this is a subjective gripe, as everyone has their own tastes, and at the end of the day, you could argue the whole point of a game like this is to experience something that you might never be able to in reality. Gran Turismo and Need for Speed had already given us narratives grounded in different forms of car culture. This game, with its exotic machinery, expansive open-world formula, and a focus on lifestyle as well as racing, was doing something unique for its time, which made it stand out. The game feeds on our ingrained sense of discovery, our love of cars, and our quest for bigger and better, a formula you can no longer get away from. And let's not forget, Burnout Paradise didn't exist yet. Forza Horizon wouldn't exist for another 6 years, The Crew 8 years. You could argue that TDU's release was this genre's genesis moment. If you enjoyed your impromptu Hawaiian holiday, why not leave us a like, and let us know some of your own TDU memories in the comments section below. Subscribe for more racing game retrospectives, guides and reviews in future, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss an upload. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.